Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Trrc. I hope you all had a restful weekend. We would start our proceedings this morning. Imam, you have the floor, please. Give us prayers.
Auzubillahi minash-shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-rahmanir-rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الحمد لله هادنا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدينا الله الأول والآخر والآخر والباطن. يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي وجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين.
Amen. Shukran, Imam. Hello. Bishop, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Lord God of power and might, the creator of the universe, the creator of all humankind, we continue to thank you for your mercies and your goodness and your grace. We thank you for the past month of February, and we thank you for ushering us to the beginning of another new month, the month of March, as we continue our sittings here in the TRRC. We continue to bring all the witnesses who will come before this commission, and we ask that by Holy Spirit's power, you will enable them to speak the truth, and that you will grant the commissioners the discerning spirit to be able to discern between truth and falsehood. And we continue to pray for the general populace and the diaspora as well, that they will exercise patience and grant and allow the due process of the law to take its course. And you, who is the judge of all humankind, your justice will fall squarely. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop. Council, are we ready to continue our proceedings, I believe, from the last sitting on Thursday? If we are, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and members of the audience. Kindly usher in the witness, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Loum, may I remind you that you're still under oath?
Thank you.
Yes. Before we left on Thursday, you were telling us how you were picked up by the NIA officers. You were under the impression that you were going to be taken to the NIA. You stopped at around mile 2 to wait for the vehicle that was supposedly or was meant to bring your deputy. And suddenly you saw them turn into mile 2 prisons. You were also taken there, booked, and taken to the security wing. That's as far as your narrative went. You also started telling us about the conditions at the Mile 2 prisons. We would take it from there.
Yeah.
We want you to tell us the general conditions of the section of Mile 2 prisons you were kept, and the impact it had on you. And thereafter, we will pursue other topics as I have mentioned at the very beginning of your testimony. So could you take it up from there?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lead Counsel, Mr. Chairman, and Honorable Commissioners. When we got to Mile 2, as I said, and it was getting dark, and I was led into this cell measuring about 2 meters by 2.5 meters in length. And as I mentioned, it was dark. I asked this guy to put the light on, and he thought that maybe I didn't understand where I was. And he reminded me that I was in maximum security and there was nothing like light inside the cells. I said, fine. So I had to grope in the dark to find where the bed is. And as I said, the place was stinking, full of mosquitoes. And the blanket was in such a state that I thought I could never sleep on that blanket. So I had to throw it away on the floor and I decided to try the mattress itself. I'll spend the night on the mattress, but I hardly slept. There were so many things going through my mind. I thought that there was no way, that there was a mistake, this thing would be sorted out by tomorrow. And that was the reality. It was never sorted out. In the cell itself, there was no sort of sanitation. There was just a bucket where you were supposed to empty to ease yourself. And there was, I think, 2 or 3 liters of water that you were supposed to use throughout the night. It was in the morning I realized how filthy the cell was really. By then I could see. And then in the morning, that was when also colleagues who knew me before had the opportunity to come and peep through a sort of peephole in the door of the cell and to tell me that, well, you are around, we welcome you here, we didn't want to see you, but unfortunately you are here. And I could clearly remember a colleague and a friend, Lamin Sane, who was the PS for Works. And he was the first guy who looked through the window and said, boy, you are here. I'm sorry to see you here, but unfortunately, now that you are here, you have to survive somehow. We have to survive and tell our story so that not only the Gambia, but the world at large would know what we are going through. And I think for almost a week, I was kept in solitary confinement, whereby you are only released in the morning for about 20 minutes for you to go and take a shower if you are lucky. If not, you may not have the chance because it's a long queue that you have to join. One thing that also had an impact on me was the fact that basic medical care was almost non-existent. There was some sort of medic called Walf Kujabi. I remember.
You call him some sort of medic. What do you mean by that?
Because I don't think that he has basic training in medicine. At one point, he asked us to spell abscess for him. Abscess. He turned around and asked me to spell leukocyte for him because he was writing a report. So I knew that this guy could not have had any type of medical training. And he was the person who was responsible for our health. So I thought that we were in big trouble.
And you mentioned the name before.
Yeah.
Could you remind us of that name?
Walf might have been an acronym, I don't know his name, but I remember one time I was at home and over the radio I heard that he had passed away. Walf Kujabi or Walf something Kujabi, but he has passed away. He was responsible for the medical unit of at least Security Wing 5. The other thing that struck me was also the fact that there were signs of malnutrition, signs of advanced stages of tuberculosis. In some of the patients, you could see that these are terminal cases of tuberculosis. Some of the inmates were definitely mentally imbalanced. They were completely off their rockers. Like a boy from Tobacco Road telling me that, no, I am just here because I don't like my mom, so I say I will stay here for some time. In fact, for me, I'm not detained, I'm just here for some time. I know that the guy was not well. And there were so many of them. There was somebody called Abdurrahman Ba. He had been detained in Security Wing 5 for almost 9 years. And this guy has never been to court.
Would it be Balde or Ba?
Abdurrahman, I cannot remember. It might be Balde, it might be. But one thing I remembered about him was that he could not speak Wolof or Mandinka. The only language that he was fluent in was Fula and French. When he learned that I could speak French, every time he would come to me and explain to me his predicament.
What did he say was his situation?
The situation was that he had the he was unfortunate that the day of the Farafenni attack, he was caught at the border between Basse and Willingara, going back home, because I think he was from Kolda, and he had on him a homemade pistol. He was arrested at the border, and somebody had the brainwave that these are the Farafenni attackers, and he was arrested and taken straight to Mile 2 security wing. He had nobody to recourse to. He could not have legal advice or legal help, and he was there for almost 8-9 years.
Just languishing there, not processed, not charged, as far as you know.
As far as what he told me, he has never been to court, and eventually, when I was free through a court order, I remember asking the others who came afterwards. Omar Ndao, for example, I asked Omar, "Where is my man?" Because Omar also could speak some French, and we used to chat together. He told me, unfortunately, as soon as you left, this guy went off his head. He became imbalanced completely. I don't know what his eventual fate was. Then the issue of malnutrition. Ancient diseases like beriberi were rampant. You could see the signs.
Why do you call them ancient diseases?
Because these were diseases that we thought that in modern times, nobody will have to grapple with diseases like beriberi. It was mainly a problem of nutritional deficiency, which we thought that at least basic nutritional values of the food that is being given out to inmates would have been looked at. We are not saying that somebody will have a balanced diet, but at least basic requirements, calorific and also, vitamins and other additives would have been present. That's what we thought. But they were there. I had particularly had sympathy for a group of, they called them the rebels from Casamas who were in prison with us. They were being fed a starvation diet, almost empty rice, white rice, and most of them developed beriberi. For beriberi, it's easy to diagnose. The clinical symptoms are very easy to find out. If you
and what are they?
One of them, which is almost of diagnosis value, is that if you press the skin of somebody suffering from beriberi, the indentation can stay there for 2 or 3 minutes. You press it, it is there. You can see your indentation caused by the pressure. And it takes time for it to recover. That has been used by clinicians for a long time for diagnosing the beriberi. The other issue is the fact that people who have tuberculosis were using the same toilet facilities, the same bar rooms with us.
How about eating utensils, plates and so on?
I guess it's the same utensils because they just bring your food to you on a plate. You don't know where the plate is, whether it was properly clean or not, but I know it will never be disinfected. That will be a luxury. But whether they will use even enough soap and water to clean it, that's doubtful.
I know, growing up in Banjul, we used to see that place called Wencho. That's what we used to call it. Yes. And it used to be some quarantine for people with tuberculosis. Yes. Was there any form of quarantine or segregation of patients with tuberculosis in the prison? As
far as I know, there was none. You could see them, you could identify them, I mean, it was not that we had confirmation of the diagnosis, but from the clinical symptoms, it was very, very clear that these are people who are suffering from.
I mean, with a man, of course, with your kind of training, you would be able to identify who's got tuberculosis or not.
Yes, there was no segregation. There was no I mean, what would have made sense is to transfer them to the infectious disease hospital, which is just across, I mean, or just very adjacent to the prisons, but they were never.
About 150 meters away.
Very near, very near, very near, but it was not the case.
Tell us more about the food. Why was it that these people were all suffering from nutritional deficiency? Tell us more about
Mostly it is protein deficiency. Sources of protein. If a prisoner is about to die and they think that he needs help, they will put him on what is called high protein diet. High protein means stew with quarter bonga. just a piece of bonga, that's high protein. Ordinarily, almost no protein is added to the diet that is given out. I think that a lot of people who have testified here have already talked about the routine and the type of food that's available. In the morning pap, the chere dry or wet. They call it chere, but it's not chere really. It's the husk of the grain itself, what is called choh in Wolof. That's what they feed to people.
That is meant for animal feed.
Yes, it's part. In fact, they are not just feed. For example, poultry with the alone they will die. You need to add some other things to it. But that's one of the things that they were using to feed the inmates. When they talk about pap, you wonder really whether it is pap. Nobody has any idea exactly what it is made of. And there was this routine that struck me also. Every Thursday, the wardens will go around asking for plastic bags. Do you have plastic bag in your cell? And I wondered why are they asking for plastic bags, specifically on Thursdays. Then later I was made to understand that every Thursday a bull is slaughtered for the inmates. And apparently they share out the meat, and the inmates are given bits and pieces of...
Who shares the meat?
The people looking for plastic bags. They are the wardens, the prison officers, and so forth. They apparently share the meat among themselves, and the innards, that's the internal organs, the intestines, the whatever. If you are lucky, you have a piece of intestine on your plate, if you are lucky. If not, it's a shin, bones that even a dog will find difficult to eat. That's what ends up on the plate of inmates.
But were you aware, while as an inmate there, were you aware that a bull was slaughtered for the detainees and the prisoners every Thursday?
Because I asked, why are these people looking for plastic bags? And specifically on Thursdays, I was given this explanation. That is because they share out the meat that is meant for the detainees. And I know that every Thursday, we have something that resembles meat coming from a bull, probably.
But did the prisoners ever protest while you were there?
No. In fact, if you want to make too much noise, they will say, please, don't make noise. If you make any noise here, we'll be in big trouble. I remember once, they gave us food that was laced with diesel, rice laced with diesel. And I told the guy in charge, sir, have you smelled this rice? He said, oh yes, when we asked the driver to go and pick up the rice, unfortunately, he also picked up diesel for our generator, and some of it, of course, contaminated the rice, but it's not a problem. So I remember one of the detainees telling me, please, don't complain too much about food here. You might put us all in trouble. I said, in that case, I rest my case. But I thought that it is good that for people who are in charge to know what we are going through. But that was not a very popular, sort of statement. So I said, okay, fine. Maybe I will survive, maybe I will not survive. And unfortunately, a lot of people did not survive. A lot of people died in Mile 2 while I was there. Not only from, not from the security wing, but from the main yard. When people cause crime in the main yard, they transfer you to the security wing. And one of them told me that he kept records, and that from August to December, there were about 38 deaths. I told him, deaths? He said, yes.
That is of epidemic proportions, considering the population at Mile 2.
But that again is hearsay. That's what somebody told me. Yeah, so I don't know. It might have been true. It might have been an exaggeration.
But did you have reason to believe that there were many deaths?
From what I have seen, with my little medical background, I was certain that people are bound to die. It is not the type of place that people can survive. Resistance to diseases is not innate in people. Some people have varying degrees of resistance to diseases. Immune systems are different. Our very chemical and physical nature are different, completely different. Some people can take a lot of punishment, others cannot. So if you are unfortunately not of the type who can sustain some of these problems, you will die. A lot of people die.
You talked about contaminated food, food with no nutritional contents. How about the water?
Water. I will not, maybe the water was not that bad because it came from the public tap, maybe. But for us, my worry was that the bottles where the water is kept might be contaminated. I don't know whether it was clean, because they normally would bring to you, particularly 4 weeks of detention, you are in solitary confinement, they bring these Evian bottles of water, 2 for you to manage for the whole day, and the bottles might have been clean, they may not have been very clean, but you are so thirsty that you don't care. You are forced to drink it. And I also think that there was the issue of, I want to say something, but maybe it will come up, we can continue.
How about the ventilation in the cells?
There was hardly any ventilation. At the back of the cell, very high up, there was a small window, and in front there was a sort of peephole that, if you are lucky, a little bit amount of air will come in and get out. But I was lucky that I was detained in December to January. Around that time, it was a little bit cool. But I was told by inmates I have met there that in August, I think June, July, August, it will get so hot that nobody will ask you to remove your clothes. They say you will be naked in your cell because you dare not wear anything. And when they open the cell for you to go and take fresh air, you just run out sweating, half naked. That was how terrible it was.
But as far as you know, did detainees complain about this particular condition?
As I said, people were so scared that even if you want to complain, they were sort of trying to hush you down and say, please, in case you complain too much, we'll be in trouble. And they have different ways of punishing you. They have different ways of punishing inmates.
Like what? Give us examples.
I'll give you an example. The privilege of praying together, congregational prayers. We thought it was a very big privilege. But sometimes, if our guards are not happy with us, they will not allow us to pray together, particularly Friday prayers. They would not. And you have to pray in your cell. So that was one big privilege for us, for example. We thought that it was a big privilege. And also, here I think I have to also thank the Christian charities. The 70 days I was in maximum security, I did not see one Muslim charity bringing anything to the prisons. The Christians, almost routinely every other 2 weeks, they will bring tapalapa bread, and sontop. I mean, to us here, it might look like, what is sontop, what is tapalapa? But for us, it used to look like tobaski. Can you see the difference? We thought that, they are coming. Maybe on Wednesday we'll have our tapalapa and sontop. It made a big difference. I think that this is time for the other charities to take cue from what our Christian brothers were doing. I'm a Muslim by birth, by everything, but I was disappointed. And then I think every Sunday they used to have their Christian service. There were very few Christian prisoners in Security Wing 5, but they will have their small congregational, meetings and so forth. We never saw one imam in the period that we were in detention. Unfortunately, that's the reality.
Thank you for that information. How about your beddings?
The bedding was a rough straw mattress that could have been there for maybe for the last 10 years, I don't know, but it was always stinking. Stinking and stinking and stinking. It was on top of a concrete platform. And you have no choice, you have to sleep on it, because it was a little bit better than sleeping on a concrete plank. It was terrible.
Well, were you given blankets?
Yes, there was a blanket. The blanket was supposed to act both as a bed sheet and also for what you used to cover yourself.
How about washing of these blankets? Was it regular or?
It was, as far as I know, you are supposed to wash your own blanket if you have the opportunity. For the first few days that I was there, I was not using the blanket at all. But eventually, after I think 2 weeks, when I had the opportunity, when I was removed from solitary confinement, my next door neighbor, who was accused of being an armed robber, although he didn't even know what armed robbery was, he has to ask me, "Doctor, what is armed robbery?" I say, okay, so that's what you are charged. You say, yes, but I don't know. I am from Basel. They brought me here. They say I'm an armed robber. I don't even know what armed robber is. This was the guy who would help me. And he washed the blanket after 2 weeks. But the problem was, when he washed the blanket, it took again a long time for the blanket to get dry. Because as I said, it was a period when it was not that hot. So no, the prison authorities will not wash your blanket for you. You are supposed to wash it yourself. I think they give out some soap from time to time that we are supposed to use for washing your things and your beddings and so forth.
How about protection from the mosquitoes?
There was no protection. Nothing, absolutely. Nothing. You are at the mercy of the mosquitoes, and malaria was rampant. Again, I know that my colleague here, Usman Jammeh, who worked under me for a long period, the deputy minister, he mentioned the problem of ethnicity. It's a reality. Unfortunately, I don't want to go into detail, but there was marked discrimination based on ethnicity. For example, I had this terrible chest infection, and I told Wolf, can you just prescribe something for me? My wife will get it for me, medication from outside. He told me, the prescription forms is finished. Maybe next week I'll be able to prescribe. I told him if I'm still alive by next week, that's fine. Then the same day, I saw him prescribing for his Jola cousins. I mean, the Jolas are nice people, but I think Jammeh brought in a situation where they were trying to, maybe promote ethnic differences and so forth. So I was really hot. I told him, but Wolf, you just told me that the prescription forms are finished. Now you are prescribing for your cousins.
In a sense, you are confirming the witness's testimony that the Jolas were given preferential treatment over people of other ethnicities.
That is true. And most of the wardens, the prison officers were Jola. But also, a very big proportion of the detainees were also Jolas, and they suffered like us, but then they had these small privileges. Because they speak Jola to the wardens, and they are given some privilege.
Okay, interesting. How did it feel to you stepping down from the high pedestal of permanent secretary of one of the most important ministries in such a developing country like the Gambia, straight from there and being thrust into Mile 2 without any explanation whatsoever about what you may or may not have done in such horrible conditions?
Yeah, I think that at the beginning I was mad. I was very, very mad. At the beginning I was very angry. But later I thought, well, okay, with my background, I could understand things. I could make some diagnosis and arrive at conclusions. I said, okay, this is what I have to go through. What helped me was also faith. I said, maybe this is what was destined for me. From my side as a religious person, I said, okay, let me take it in good faith. But at the same time, I was always angry. I had said that my blame was squarely on the face of Yahya Jammeh. I thought that nobody else was responsible for my predicament. He was wholly and entirely responsible. But as a country also, we maybe allowed it to happen. All of us allowed it to happen.
Why do you blame Yahya Jammeh?
For so many reasons. Number one, when I got to Mile 2, I think 2 or 3 days later, I was taken to the office of David Colley, who was the head of the prison services. He told me, well, for you, I'm very sorry, we don't know anything about your case. We had orders from the top that we should bring you to the prison, that's why you are here. I don't know anything about your case. I told him, is that so? He said, I said, well, okay, then that's fine.
As far as you know, was there any paper, any document that was submitted to Mile 2 prison which served as authorization for your admission into the prison?
Absolutely no paper at all. That's why David Colley was telling me to my face that I don't know why you are here. For you, it's order from the top. I told him, okay, thank you.
And what do you understand order from the top to mean?
For me, order from the top it meant that it was Yahya Jammeh who asked them to pick me up from my house and take me to Mile 2, period. He was the only person who had that type of authority in the country. Nobody else.
While at Mile 2, did you have any contact with the investigative authorities?
Yes. After almost a week or 10 days, I was one morning picked up from the Mile 2 and taken to the NIA. And when I got there, that was when I was asked to give details of the problem of the fertilizer. And I explained in details what I had told you here in the last sitting about the procedure, how it was imported, how it was stored, how it was sold, and so forth. And that was for the first time, I think, that I had the opportunity to see my wife. And in fact, that was probably also due to her courage, because there were other detainees there who have been there for 2-3 months and they have not seen any relative.
But while you were there, before you were taken to the NIA, were you given an opportunity to speak to a family member?
Never. In fact, we were told, because it was strange, because some of the detainees who have been there for a long time, like we were there at the same time with the detainees from the failed Trrc coup attempt. And they were getting visits from their relatives. So I asked, but why are we not getting visits? I was told that for you, you are a security detainee, and security detainees are not supposed to have contacts with their family. That was the explanation from at least the prison authorities.
How about lawyers? Were you allowed to speak to lawyers?
No. In fact, there was no way that I could have spoken to any lawyer.
Did they accord you the opportunity?
No, never.
So your first contact with the outside world was when you were taken to the NIA?
Exactly.
And that was after how long?
About after, I think, 10 or 14 days, something like that. But I have the exact the dates, I think, on my statement, if I can remember. But it took at least, certainly more than 10 days, probably.
Almost 10 days.
10 days, around 10 days.
From 13, look at paragraph 13 of your statement.
Okay.
You said from 13th December 2006 to 22nd December 2006, I was never again contacted.
That's it, yeah.
In fact, yes, and on the 22nd you were contacted and taken to the NIA.
That's it.
So it means that for how many days? 11 days, actually.
Yeah.
10 days no contact, and you got contact on the 9 days no contact, and then you have contact on the 10th day. Yes, sir. So tell us about the things that happened at the NIA when you went there.
Yeah, when I went there, I was asked to set line again on the issue of the fertilizer. What was my role in the whole, system, the logistics, and so forth. And I explained that. I told him, look, as I said earlier, when the day that I was arrested, I'm not in any way responsible for not the procurement, not the storage, not the transportation, not the sale, not the banking of the proceeds. I told him exactly, the system that we had in place. And I told them, if there is shortage, the people to ask is the people who have the goods under lock and key in their custody, and who are the divisional agricultural coordinators. I told you that they don't even work directly under me as the permanent secretary. They work under the director of agriculture. I explained all that. And
did they accept your explanation?
Okay, and then I also gave them the latest reconciliation report from November.
We will come to that.
Okay.
But did they accept your explanation?
I don't know whether they accepted it or not. I cannot make a statement to that.
Did they say anything to suggest that as permanent secretary and principal accounting officer for the ministry, you have ultimate oversight responsibility, even if not accountability?
They did not make that type of statement. And strangely, the people who were interviewing me, to me, seemed to be quite junior officers who were just used to taking statements. They would write statements one by one and ask you some questions.
Are you suggesting that they did not understand the government mechanics, government administration?
I am not sure. I am not sure whether they understood how government operates. I am not sure. But they were relatively junior officers.
And you gave them the reconciliation document. Tell us about the reconciliation document, what it entailed. You had provided it before.
Yes. I remember that there was somebody called Sanding. He was the one who was asked to analyze the reconciliation report. And going through it, he realized that there was need to talk to the divisional agricultural coordinators. So after some time, he told us, okay, what is going to happen? I will invite all the divisional agricultural coordinators to the NIA. They will come and then we will discuss and we'll see, we'll take it up from there. And the promise was that they will bring us, I think, back to the NIA around November 24th, if I remember, December 24th, when we were supposed to meet again and together with Sandeng, sort of analyze the report. But that never happened.
But the reconciliation document, it has been produced to the Commission before. It's Exhibit 127A. The document, what does it entail? What does it what does it contain?
It was a summary of a Trrc report of the Director of Agriculture, the store keeper, and the head of the store section. Simply put, it will analyze the stock given to a divisional agricultural coordinator, what the person has sold, what he has banked, and then the outstanding balances. Yeah, so basically that is it.
In a sense, the document outlines whether there are any discrepancies between stock and banked proceeds for each and every district agri coordinator who was supplied with fertilizer.
Yes, that's what it was.
And those discrepancies is in fact the missing funds that government was after.
Even there, I'm not sure, because how they arrived at the figures that they had, I don't know, because it looked like maybe they had even compounded the interest on the loan to the shortages. They have also compounded the tonnage, the sort of bags that were lost in transit or so forth. But for them, I think that the bottom line was how much was given to you, how much did you sell, and what's outstanding. So at the end, there is a figure at the bottom line, and that was the important thing.
Was there an official audit by Gambia government?
Yes. At the end, when I was already in custody, and they started the process. And
in essence, you are saying there was no audit as at the time you were arrested?
Before my arrest. No, yes. There was no audit, no.
There was no audit?
No.
So if there was any suspicion that funds were stolen, it was merely based on speculation at that point in time, the time of your arrest?
Might not be just based on speculation, but the evidence that was available at that time pointed to the fact that there might be the possibility of funds being missing.
But the basis of that conclusion, did it point to where, at what point or at what office the funds might have gone missing?
Yes, it did, very clearly.
And what are those points, as far as you can recall?
It was the divisional agricultural coordinators.
And as far as you know, and on the basis of the arrangements that were put in place, the permanent secretary had nothing to do with any of the administrative steps involved in dealing with those funds.
Exactly. That was responsibility of the DACs themselves and also the Director of Agriculture.
Why do you think that government jumped all those responsible entities or officials and moved on to you?
I think at that time it was the excesses of the executive. The executive thought that they could do anything. And I think it was just the mere fact that so much power was concentrated in the hands of Yahya Jammeh, and he thought that he could do anything that he wanted to. My understanding was that he just made a phone call. I mean, they wanted to import diesel, and money was not available. The money that was in the account was not enough. So he was told that there is outstanding balance of 10 million from agriculture, and he asked, "Where is Dr. Loum? Is he in town?" They say, "Go and get him." That's my understanding.
But that's obviously hearsay. That's obviously hearsay, that understanding.
That's obviously?
Hearsay.
Hearsay, yes, I was not there, certainly.
Yeah.
I was not there.
But I would not ask you for the source. But how close is that source to Yahya Jammeh?
The person who told me was close. It was a colleague. I don't want to go into the detail, but he was close.
Do you have any reason to doubt what the person said?
No, I don't have any reason to doubt the person.
Okay. So here you are, you explained to the NIA investigators the process, and they promised to call in the DACs in order to examine the reconciliation again, and you said nothing happened subsequent to that. Do you know whether they did any other investigation?
Yes, they did. I understand that they did because after a period, somebody told me that some of the DACs had to sell their properties to offset their losses. Some of them sold their compounds. And then there was also an audit from the Central Audit Department. And then the audit report came out eventually.
But those DACs who were made to sell their properties and refund government, do you know whether they were arrested?
As far as I know, I might be wrong, but not a single DAC was ever arrested, because I would have heard about it.
And I mean, by getting them to sell their properties and reimburse or refund the account, so some form of acceptance of responsibility, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. And the evidence that they had refunded some of the funding is that initially when I was charged, the charges was that $6 million is shortage somewhere. 2 years later or a year later, the charges went down from 6 million to 3 million. That's why there are two different charges there. So my understanding was that it had gone down because they have been paying. At least they have managed to pay $3 million.
So other people were paying for shortages that you were supposed to be accountable for.
Exactly. In fact, I have never paid a single dollar. I remember once Bakun, who was the prosecutor, and one time he told me, Dr. Loum, can you talk to your people so that they can pay more? I said, but how do I know these people? I don't even know who's supposed to pay what. He told me that if you talk to your boys nicely, maybe they can settle the whole level.
Okay. So the first few weeks, you were not charged with an offense, and you were in detention for 70 days. At what stage were you charged?
I think a few days after the court order that was given releasing me from detention.
So how did you manage to come out of detention?
I managed to come out of detention through the efforts of my wife. My wife went around talking to a lot of the leading lawyers in the country. Most of them told her, please, you just wait, because if you start any legal action against the government, Yaya Jammeh will be angry and nobody knows what he is going to do. She visited a lot of lawyers. So in the end, she was fortunate to talk to Ami Bensouda, lawyer Ami Bensouda. Ami Bensouda told Mrs. Loum, I'm happy that you have come to my office. We have to take this thing up because otherwise nothing will happen and your husband will languish in jail for a very long time. Single-handedly, together with the deputy lead counsel, who was then working with Ami Bensouda, they managed to get me out of jail. Ami Bensouda took it upon herself to come to my door, the security wing, to process the papers and take me physically out of the jail and put me in her vehicle from the jail to Banjul. I think that was just remarkable, really.
Yeah,
and of course, with the help of Hadi Dande also, she was involved from the beginning. Yeah. I remember my wife told me that she was running around getting all these papers signed. So I'm indebted to her also.
All three women really
women.
sorted you out.
They were all women. The men were scared to even think of challenging Yaya Jammeh. All the men that my wife saw said, no, please just wait. You don't worry. If you go to court, he will be very annoyed with your husband. He can do anything.
Well, we salute all of them for securing your liberty.
Yes.
Maybe it's a good thing the male lawyers were not involved.
Well, maybe. But eventually, of course, the main lawyers came up. Eventually.
So you were released after 70 days?
Yes.
Without charge?
Without charge.
Without being presented before any lawyer?
No.
Without an explanation as to what you have done?
No.
How do you feel about that now?
Well, for me, the basic problem was my services from the government were terminated. In jail, They just saw me a letter through the grill that, Dr. Loum, you are no longer the permanent secretary in agriculture. Your services have been terminated. I say, can I have a copy of this letter? They say, you cannot have a copy of this letter whilst you are in jail. I say, okay, fine. Then the next thing they told me was that after some period, I was told that my passport would be confiscated. They will go to my house and that let me tell my wife that they are coming to get my passport. Both the official passport and my ordinary passport. They went there, they collected everything. And that was it.
Who informed you about your dismissal from the service?
It could have been one of the NIA agents. I think it was Usman Jallo, who showed me a letter at mile 2 that your services have been terminated. Usman Jallo.
Were you given the letter to hold and read?
No. To this day, I have never had the opportunity to hold that letter in my hand. Never.
So can you explain to us the process, how it was done? Where were you? Where was this person? And how you showed this document? Yeah,
we were in mile 2, just after when I filled the cautionary statement, cautionary form. After some time, he brought out a letter and told me, this is your letter. I said, which letter? He said, this letter, your services have been terminated.
So this was day 1, actually?
Yes. No. It was not day 1. I think that there was a day I was asked to go to the Minister of Agriculture to hand over to my deputy. And it was during that day that I was told the letter, and I did not have the opportunity to hold it. You
were supposed to have been arrested together, well, almost on the same day with your deputy. What happened to him?
The same thing that happened to me. We were in it throughout.
He too was detained?
He was detained. In fact, he was detained for 103 days or 100 and something days, because when I had the court order, I left mile 2, but he stayed on for over a month afterwards.
So to who did you hand over?
I handed over to Dr. Amadou Sow, who was the next in line.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So he was not your immediate deputy?
No. He was then the deputy permanent secretary for sales affairs, something like that.
Okay. All right. So after you were released, were you completely free of this allegation that you are responsible for the missing millions in Ministry of Agriculture?
No, I was not completely free. In fact, I think that during that period, our lawyer, Ami Bensouda, told my wife that they may come back for him, but in case they come, I think that he gave my wife a lot of numbers. Even if it's at night, call these numbers. Whatever happened, he's not going back to jail. They may detain him in a police station or something like that. But so that was always hanging over my head, and I knew that eventually something can happen.
But subsequently, you were charged with
economic crimes.
Economic crimes.
Yes.
Okay, and you appeared before court.
Yes, I appeared before 5 judges. The whole process took 5 years, starting with, if I remember, Justice Monaghan, then Yemoa, then Joseph Wowo, then Lamin Jobate, then Ami Diouf Conte. Ami Diouf, is it Conte? Yes, Ami Diouf Conte. The whole process took 5 years. And it took 5 years because in the interim, the audit report came out, and it exonerated me.
At what stage did the audit report come out?
I think it was very early on, maybe in the 4th year it came out. I wanted to get a copy of the audit report. I went to the central audit, and they were even scared of talking to me. Nobody could even talk to me. They thought that I was poisoned maybe, but I know they were scared of Yaya Jammeh. I never had the opportunity.
So how do you know that the audit report exonerated you?
Because friends told me, friends who were working at central audit, who told me, don't mention my name, but I have seen the report, and I'm happy to tell you that you are exonerated. And also, eventually, when we went to court, if you look at the judgment, the judge said that what the state should have done is to withdraw the case immediately the audit report came out, because the audit report exonerated me. So I know I was exonerated.
At what stage did the judge know that there was an audit report which exonerated you?
I don't know at what stage, but it is in the judgment.
Because one would have expected that this audit report being exculpatory evidence, the state had an obligation to disclose these documents to you as is a matter of right, that they disclose this report to you so that you can use it as part of your defense. Was that done?
It was not done. But also, I think that I was elated that if there is an audit query and there is need for, if somebody is accused of doing something, normally in an audit report, they will ask you for explanation. Since nobody contacted me to shed light on any of the issues raised in the audit report, my conclusion then was that I had nothing to fear. Obviously, I wanted to use it as a defense, but I didn't have the opportunity because the people who had it in their custody were scared to give me a copy of the audit report.
Well, anyway, I guess this is something that is water under the bridge. But you could have asked, officially demanded that the audit report be disclosed to you. As a matter of procedure, this should be part of the disclosure arrangements between parties in any litigation. So your lawyers could have written to ask for this report or any other document that can potentially exculpate you. The state had a duty to disclose that to you. Yeah.
I think that you are right, but I don't. Maybe my lawyer thought that it was not necessary. Maybe, I don't know.
Perhaps. We can't be second guessing them. So ultimately, you are prosecuted. For 5 years.
Yes.
During this period, could you travel out of the country?
No, I could not. I could not, and I had.
Why?
Well, because my travel documents were with them. Number one. Number two, the adjournments were in such a way that they will ask you to come next week, come next month, come 2 days' time, come 5 days' time. And it dragged on for 5 years. I mean, there was no way that I could have traveled. And there was even no way that I could even take up gainful employment because people were even scared to talk to me.
You were toxic at the time.
Very toxic. And I can remember Maimuna Tal was in court around that same time. In one of the sittings that we had, and we were waiting in the corridor, she told me, "Doctor, I'm very sorry, but when you are in this type of situation, number one, you will become poorer because you spend all your resources paying for your lawyers. Number two, you will lose all your friends. You will be very lonely." And that was true. I told Maimuna, "You are right." She told me, this is also the same type of situation that I've gone through. So that was the reality. People avoid talking to you, and I avoided, contact with any government officer.
Are you aware that there was some form of reluctance or unwillingness on the part of state institution to execute the orders of the court to have your release? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of it, but I will not be surprised.
Perhaps that explains why Mrs. Bensouda had to go to Mile 2 to physically get you out.
To me, it was very strange because really when I saw Bensouda in Mile 2, the lawyer I knew, I could not understand it. I said that then there must be something behind this thing. She personally went through all the process of signing the documents, but I was not aware of that fact. It was very strange.
So ultimately, you were acquitted and discharged by another woman.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Ami Juf Conte. So what I can say is that really, I think that for me it has always been an experience. Women in my life have helped me. Not that I don't have male friends, a lot of the male friends. But when push came to pull, it was the women who bailed me out.
At least they are the ones who had the strength of character to stand up to the injustice against you.
Exactly. Exactly.
I understand, I wasn't here, but I understand that there were what were called mercenary judges in Gambia at the time, You are probably lucky you didn't come before any one of them.
I was in front of them. I was just lucky that they didn't, maybe it was at the beginning. I was in front of Justice Wowo. I was in front of Justice Yemoa.
Was he also mercenary?
I suspected. Yemoa also, I suspected. I don't have any proof. Why?
So ultimately, you were acquitted and discharged on 16th day of January 2012.
Yes.
Take a look at this document. And kindly tell us what it is.
Yeah, this is the judgment from the High Court.
Which court? Before which judge?
Before Justice Ami Diouf.
And it is the final judgment that led to your acquittal?
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Chair, we ask to exhibit this document as 127B. Should you accept the document? And there are few reports about your case. I have here an Observer newspaper which talks about your case, which indicates the type of charges you faced. And here it states that you were charged for being the accounting officer and entrusted with responsibility for distributing and selling 48,000 metric tons of fertilizer and 2,230 metric tons of urea. And you willfully or omitted or recklessly handled the proceeds or the material, thereby causing losses to the government to the tune of 6 million.
Yeah.
And the subsequent, yes. And the other charge is the loss of 1.5 million. Could you take a look at these two documents and confirm to us that whether those represents the charges that you faced?
Counsel, your request regarding the application and the judgment is granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That would be Exhibit 127B. Could you take a look, Mr. Loum, Dr. Loum, yes, at those documents? Those are Fourier newspaper reports about the charges that you faced, the initial charge and possibly the amended charge.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
All right. Could you just read the particulars of the first charge, taking it from the middle of the page?
Okay, the charge is stated as permanent secretary of DOSA between April 2005 and December 2006, being the accounting officer and entrusted with the responsibility of distributing and selling 47,775 metric tons of NPK fertilizer and 2,229 metric tons of urea fertilizer, valued at $51,480,100. They willfully or by omission or recklessly handle and thereby cause losses to the government of the Gambia to the tune of $6,349.
So this is the charge you faced in
Yes.
the initial,
Yes.
the initial stages. And the second document also reflects the amended charge, if I may call it that.
Yes.
And on that one, the discrepancy has now come down to
1 million.
1 million.
Yeah, 1,471,251.
So the difference between the two charges is money that's been recovered from those who were entrusted with direct responsibility for the sale of the fertilizer.
Exactly. That's why I said the charges, the amount keep on dwindling as they were recovering monies from the DACs.
So let's understand this. You were charged for something somebody else was responsible for.
Exactly.
And their losses, then you were charged for their losses for as long as they did not reimburse the state.
Exactly. And strangely enough, the prosecution at one point was asking me to help them with the DAC so that they can pay the difference. That I did not understand.
So detain the permanent secretary or charge the permanent secretary, and the junior staff would cough up the money they stole.
Exactly. That was what was happening.
And how would you describe that?
Well, I would describe it as just gross injustice on the part of the state.
Gangsterism?
Said?
Gangsterism?
Well, that was the order of the day. Gangsterism was, manifested in various formats. I had the misfortune of working very closely with Yaya Jammeh for some period when I was his PS, and gangsterism was the order of the day.
Did you resign, Dr. Loum?
Did I resign?
Knowing that the government you served was headed by a gangster?
I did not resign because I thought that eventually this gangster will get his day in court. And I wasn't working for Yaya Jammeh. I was working for the government of the Gambia. I was there before Yaya Jammeh became president. So and ordinarily, I would leave Yaya Jammeh.
We are still waiting to see Yaya Jammeh in court.
It will happen. I don't know whether it will be during my period or not, but at least that is my hope.
Okay. Mr. Chair, the document dated 29 March 2007, showing the first charge, if you agree, Mr. Chair, to be admitted as Exhibit 127C, and the document reflecting the second charge dated 25th June 2009, should be Exhibit 127D.
Council, these two documents are press accounts of the charges. They're not documents from the court or from anybody else.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Fine, thank you for that confirmation. Your request is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Dr. Loum, these charges hung over your neck for 5 years. Ultimately, you were vindicated by the courts. You were acquitted and discharged. Were you able to now finally proceed on with your life unhindered?
No, unfortunately not. Immediately I was acquitted and discharged. I had an opportunity to go and work outside the Gambia, but I needed my passport. I applied.
And can you tell us about this opportunity? What was this opportunity?
Yeah, I was supposed to do some work for FAO in Sierra Leone and Liberia. I was supposed to prepare their national livestock sector review. And I had the opportunity. I was supposed to go and do the job. I respectfully applied to the Secretary General, who was then Joguba, to get my passport back. And I quoted the fact that I have been exonerated, I have been acquitted and discharged. And I wrote this letter today to the head of state through the Secretary General, who was Joguba. Later, I had a reply saying that this passport belongs to the Gambia government, and that it was, the last paragraph of the letter was very contradictory. It said that I should address my request to the Minister of Interior after telling me that the passport belongs to the Gambia government.
Let's take the letters one by one.
Okay.
Tell us your first letter. When was it dated, who it was addressed to, and the gist of the letter?
It was dated 26 April 2012, addressed to the Secretary General, Office of the President. And basically, I was just informing the Secretary General that I have been acquitted of this charge and that I want them to give me back my passport.
And when did they reply? Excuse me, what is the date of your letter?
26 April 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
All right. When was their reply?
9th May 2012.
And what did they say? You can read their letter.
Okay.
Read it out.
Dr. Badara Loum is addressed to me, Kanifing Estate. Application for the return of my passport, that's the heading. I write on behalf of His Excellency, Sir Professor Dr. Ejeje Jame, to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated 26 April 2012 on the above caption. His Excellency the President has asked me to accordingly convey to you that the passport is the property of the Gambia government, and you should therefore request the Minister of Interior to return your passport and not this office. So I could not see the connection anyway.
So did they give you back your passport?
They did not.
Mr. Chair, we asked to put these two documents as exhibits. The letter addressed to the Secretary General to be Exhibit 127D, E, excuse me, and the response from the SG as 127F.
Counsel, your request is granted. Witness, when they referred you to the Ministry of Interior, did you go to the ministry?
I did not. I know that I will be wasting my time. I did not bother because I was reminded in the first paragraph and in the first opening statement that the passport is the property of the Gambia government. So I knew that I would be wasting my time.
Well, indeed, the passport is the property of the Gambia government, but the Gambia government does not travel or has no use for that passport. It is to enable a Gambian citizen to use it. So really, it is the property of the government, but for use by a Gambian citizen and not for use by the government. So the government should have given it. Did you eventually manage to travel?
Yes, eventually I managed to travel because I had a friend who knew how to get passports legally or illegally. And he helped out. He told me, do you have any copy of your old passports? I gave him a very old passport that I had in my custody. And he went on the ground and he got me a passport. So I was smuggled across the border to take my flight from Dakar.
Well, be rest assured, Dr. Loum, that you would not be alone to have done that. Many people were denied the opportunity to take international jobs. And they managed to be smuggled out of the country, and they took flights and left. So you were not alone to have done that.
I know.
But why did you choose to use that option?
Because the other option would have been to, I don't know, to forego, to decide not to take up the appointment, or to risk being arrested by Jammeh and his people. I could not have passed through the airport with that passport. I could not have. Because there might have been a watch list of people, you know, who have been denied passports or something like that.
Indeed. You left in 2012 to do this important job for FAO. Did you encounter any other problems with security officers when you returned to Gambia?
No, I did not. Although I was given a sort of a welcome I did not deserve by somebody I met on the flight, a friend I met on the flight, and when we got to Banjul, he went through VIP, I went through ordinary, and as I was trying to get my luggage, somebody looking like an NIA came to me and said, "Are you Dr. Loum?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, please, you have to wait." I was wondering why I had to wait, but apparently my friend was asking for a lift so that I should take the person home. But I thought that it was the NIA trying to take me back to that was scary.
I can imagine. But thereafter, there were no other problems?
No.
All right. Okay, and but how do you feel about everything that has happened to you?
I feel that I was not fairly treated by the government, and by government here I mean the head of state. My career in the civil service was cut short by about 7 years, and for 5 years I was in limbo. I could not take up an appointment, I could not do anything useful, and I was sort of ostracized by society.
How about your family? How did they feel about this?
My family also was negatively impacted. One thing that really got me very annoyed, very mad, was my youngest daughter, who was then in grade 5 or grade 6 with Mrs. Ndau's school. One day, I think that the teacher, her classroom teacher, asked her, "Where is your dad?" And my daughter says, he traveled. He said, "No, you have to tell us exactly where your dad is. Is your dad not in prison?" Exactly. And my daughter said, she decided not to answer. But that was traumatic. And even when I was released, she told me the story. I told her, but the important thing is that eventually you will know, and you know that I was not involved in anything illegal. But she told me that I knew that you are not the type of person who involves yourself in illegal activities. And she was very young at that time. But thank God today, she's a career woman, and she is doing very well in life. I'm very happy about that.
Indeed, indeed. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions for Dr. Loum. He would have his opportunity to make a statement, but perhaps before I hand over, I just want you to say a few words about the colleagues with whom you were in prison.
Yes, I was with many people who were top civil servants in prison. One of them was Lamin Sane. People who know him as Lamin Sane C. He was an outstanding engineer. He designed the Westfield Birkama Highway and many bridges and culverts throughout this country. But he was also a gentleman. And I think the trauma that we faced in Mile 2, he could not really take it. And in the end, when he was released, he died shortly after his release.
You were so close, and you had such a bond with him. You even wrote a poem for and about him.
I did.
Would you want to share that?
Yes, please. I would want to, if the chairman would allow me. Thank you very much. It goes like this. O day to a friend, lest we may forget, in memory of Lamin Sane C. Oh dear friend Lamin, I will forever mourn you. How can I forget the tough days, eternity that we weathered through together at Mile 2? Humiliation, trepidation, consternation, and dismay. With egos deflated, shattered, battered, and bruised. Desperately clinging on to the tiniest thread of our challenged collective sanity, we subsisted through our ardent wish to survive and tell our story. Who can forget the night of forced arrival direct from the apparent luxury, relative comfort of our homes, to the dense days suffocating misconnect between reality and the figment of our warped, tattered imagination. I remember the relief I had on seeing you the morning after, and your welcome remarks. Boy, I'm sorry to see you here. It is a horrible place, but we must survive. The food here is horrible, terrible, and inedible. If you eat it, you may survive or perish. If you don't, you will die. Stripped of all our worldly possessions, aside from our intellect and resilience, you are a source of inspiration to us all. Lengthy period of enforced isolation provided fertile breeding ground for intellectual reflection and mental gymnastics. Despite the odds, we shared optimism, enthusiasm, and vision of our country's great future. I remember the long hours of heated intellectual exchange on issues as diverse as the works of Einstein, Homer, Christopher Okigbe, Stephen William Hawking, the nature of droplet effect, entropy, algorithms, black holes and black energy, the Big Bang and the Big Crunch, artificial intelligence, that our incomprehensible incarceration afforded us. I remember also the maniac depressive chap with smelly camembert shoes you refer to as the village idiot. And the evil, shiny, slimy, skinny tin pot dictator we all call Pol Pot, who will only smile when locking up detainees. And the medic who requests us to spell abscess and leukocyte for him. A shining example of a specialist from the bankrupt health delivery outfit, to whom our collective health and survival were mortgaged to. Let us all pray to Allah to safeguard the health of all detainees at mile 2, lest they fall prey to the machination, trials, and tribulation of the specialists. Oh Lamin, the only regret is that you did not live to witness the coalescing and gelling of our aspirations. And the final triumph of truth over ingenuity, over falsehood, over mediocrity and psychopathy. However, rest assured that we, the survivors from mile 2, will tell our story and continue to cherish the absurd moments we shared together, and pray that you rest in perfect peace, dear friend. So that was the poem. Thank you very much.
Wow. Very emotional.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is true.
And I can assure you that a lot of people who went through mile 2 would probably feel the same way. I'm not so of the eloquence to put these words together,
you see,
but would definitely feel the same way.
That is true. You know, my problem is that I'm not really a poet. I'm a scientist. But I thought that at least maybe I can try and write something. And that was triggered this poem.
Well, you are of the Landry Peters mold. If you continue writing, perhaps you would have maybe not another Kachikali, but another Sindola. Thank you very much, Dr. Loum, for this. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair. I would want to have this exhibited, because perhaps this is one of those things that can go into the TRRC museum as really one of the capturing of one's experiences at mile 2. I think it's quite an important one. But Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd ask to have it exhibited as 128G, 127G rather.
Request granted, counsel. Witness, that was a splendid manifestation of intellectual capabilities.
Thank you, thank you.
Instead of the country using your abilities and your resolve to assist the country, you wasted your time, wasted the time of the country for years. You were running around in circles. Sorry that you had to go through that. And it was a loss, not just for your family, but for the country as a whole.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Bishop, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Badara Loum, you did mention the diet that we have been served at the Mile 2 prison, and you once observed that the rice was laced with diesel. That's a very poisonous thing to give to any human being to consume. I wonder, how did you manage with such?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. That day I decided to forego my lunch. I said it's better to starve than to eat diesel. But I can assure you that I have seen people who had no choice. They were so hungry that they had to consume it, unfortunately.
The other thing you mentioned was that you had to, do the laundry. You had to wash your own blanket. Yeah. And apart from that, what of your clothes? How was it washed?
Yes, again, as I said, even in prison there are people who are really very helpful. The gentleman who was supposed to be an armed robber and he didn't know what armed robbery was the person who would help me and wash all my clothes for me. He would tell me, look, I know that you are not a criminal. Seeing you here is even an embarrassment to us. And he was responsible for washing all my clothes, my bedding and my blankets and my mosquito nets from time to time. I am also, indebted to him. Otherwise, I would have had to wash them myself.
And finally, you mentioned the Thursdays when whatever is slaughtered for the consumption of the inmates, and the prison wardens will go from shell to shell looking for plastic bags and that sort of thing. Now, how did they know that they could get plastic bags from the inmates in the shells?
Yeah. Eventually, when it was possible to get at least clothing from your family members from outside, they will put it in plastic bags and then you take it to your cell and you sign 2 shirts or 3 socks and things like that. So they know that you have this plastic bag in your cell, and the majority had. Sometimes those who are lucky enough are allowed to get provisions, and the provisions come in plastic bags. So they know the cells where plastic bags are, and they come around looking for them so that they can have their share of the meat that was from the bull that was slaughtered. Thank you.
Thank you. Imam Jallo, you have the floor, please.
Dr. Loum, I'm very sorry for what happened to you.
Thank you.
But you said after your acquittal, did you get any benefits from government for the long service you had served this country? Thank you.
Yes, because I was not dismissed. My services were terminated. I was paid my gratuity, and also I have a pension. But it was greatly reduced because, as I said, my service in the government was cut short by 7 years. So if I had retired due to reaching the statutory retirement age, of course, then the package would have been better. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Dr. Loum, if you have any concluding remarks to make, please proceed to this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, honorable commissioners, lead consul, and all other consuls, ladies and gentlemen, my family members and so forth, friends, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the TRRC for according me the opportunity to share with you, and by extension the wider public, the experience I lived through during the most trying times of my life. As a nation, we lived through horrendous human rights violations unleashed by Yahya Jammeh and his gang of thugs against civil servants and other ordinary Gambians. As I said earlier, to set the record straight, as civil servants, we did not work for Yahya Jammeh, but rather we serve our country as career professionals with no political affiliations. My career in the civil service spanned over a period of 3 decades. Thus, in the early days, I had the opportunity to work in a public service that was once rated among the best in Africa. Unfortunately, I also witnessed the process during which the institution was degraded beyond recognition. Core principles, considerations, and values were eroded, and appointments were no longer based on merit, qualification, experience, or competence, but rather on political affiliations, nepotism, and psychopathy. As a country, if we wish to forge ahead and join the community of nations that are making strides and headways towards meaningful progress, then there must be a paradigm shift towards the following: carrying out key reforms in the civil service, the security sector, including the horrible prisons, the judiciary, that will allow for speedy trials, but also just dispensation of justice, limiting the power of the executive in the new constitution to avoid repetition of the excesses of the former regime. In this regard, appointment of judges, head of parastatals, and SOEs should be subjected to a confirmation process with the National Assembly taking a leading role. The hiring and firing of top executives, and indeed all public servants, should follow due process and diligence. There is need to invest in development of human capital, infrastructure, the utilities, communication, and high-speed internet connectivity, which of course should be regulated by PURA. And there is also need to invest in agriculture and other productive sectors of the economy. With the advent of the new regime, an unprecedented opportunity is presented to us to correct the transgressions that were made in the past and set new standards that are aligned with best practices, while simultaneously ensuring that mistakes are not repeated. Unfortunately, telltale signs of position of people in power and entrusted with persons in power and entrusted with privileges are flouting them with impunity to the detriment of the nation are beginning to re-emerge. I'll give you an example. Till recently, I was the chairman of the board of directors of the Food Safety and Quality Authority. I had to resign after 6 months because I had decided that I will never be a party to an illegal process that contravenes set laws, principles, and guidelines. It is no longer tenable for a whole nation to be held hostage by an individual, such as the likes of Yahya Jammeh, who undoubtedly suffered from inferiority complex compounded by megalomania and a rabid hatred of Gambians, particularly intellectuals, and those who excel in their various vocations. In conclusion, I wish to thank my wife, a remarkable woman who dared to challenge the dictatorship when no one else had the nerve to do so. When I was incarcerated in Mile 2, she approached many of the leading lawyers in this country to help set me free. Most of them advised her to wait, and that if she proceeded with any legal action against the state, then Yahya Jammeh will be very angry, and he can do anything to me. However, one outstanding woman thought differently. When my wife approached lawyer Ami Bensouda, she wholeheartedly supported her and told her that that was the only option that can trigger action by the state. Lawyer Bensouda was the only one among the many approached by my wife who accepted the scary challenge at the time and took on the ruthless dictator head-on. Together with her formidable associate, lawyer Hadidande Njai, Jabi, the current deputy lead counsel of the Trrc, against all odds, they were able to secure a court order that released me from jail. I was surprised to see that lawyer Ami Bensouda personally marched into Mile 2 and processed the papers for my release and drove me in her private vehicle from Mile 2 to Banjul. As predicted by lawyer Bensouda, my release indeed triggered an avalanche of many lawsuits from other detainees seeking to end their unlawful incarceration in Mile 2. Once I was charged with economic crimes, I was extremely opportune for my wife to secure the services of lawyer Lamin Kamara, who was her former colleague. Without hesitation, I can safely say that Lamin Kamara is indeed one of the best criminal lawyers in this country. For a period of 5 years, Lamin Kamara relentlessly pursued my case in the High Court until I was acquitted and discharged. Astonishingly, during this period of 5 years, he was never late nor absent for a single court sitting. My family and we remain forever grateful to these lawyers who were just phenomenal. Although I cannot name all the family members, friends, relatives, and professional colleagues who jointly made my ordeal bearable, I have to make reference to some of them, like my late brother and sister, Lamin and Basil Loum, both of blessed memory, the Loum family in the Gambia and the diaspora, my uncle Seho Omar Toure, my mother-in-law, Ajinde Seka of blessed memory, friends like Usman So, formerly of the Central Bank, Modou Sise of GHE, Dr. Suleiman Sonko, and many other professional colleagues, the entire membership of Vu Master Silla of Game Senegal Street. As president of the Gambia Veterinary Medical Association, I am extremely grateful to the entire membership of the GVMA and also colleagues in the Ministry of Agriculture, the Department of Livestock Services, the Department of Agriculture, and the National Agricultural Research Institute for their formidable support when it was most needed. They all stood by me through thick and thin, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can adequately reward them. I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Loum, for those concluding remarks. We will take a 30-minute break and come back at 5 minutes past noon. Meeting is adjourned.